Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're finally back for our season 2 launch, and exciting news, as you can tell, for those that are listening in, we actually started to come back to our in-person shows. So actually, as our very first special guest to launch season 2, we have Nick Wilkinson from TTT Studios with us today. Nick, if you want to just say hi to the camera real quick.
Sure. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for having me here. I'm super excited to get into the discussion, and also the food here looks pretty amazing.
Yeah. So for those that are just kind of tuning in over our audio podcast, so today we actually brought in a food element. So this is going to be kind of something that will be going on throughout the rest of our season. And for today's feature, we have a dish called a Taiwanese beef roll. Yeah, so if we just want to pan in on the beef roll. So for those that may not be familiar with this dish, it is essentially a pan-fried scallion pancake. And inside it is rolled with a slow braised beef, cucumbers, and hoisin sauce. Usually a lot of people enjoy it because it has this like crispy, sweet, savory taste to it. It's a very popular snack for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. You can actually find it in a lot of Taiwanese restaurants around Vancouver as well as back home in Taiwan.
I feel like we're a little bit on the food shopping channel over here.
Yeah. Well, this is just, one of the interesting dishes that are part of the Vancouver multicultural city. So I think food is really a great way to kind of describe how multicultural Vancouver is. But yeah, so we're actually going to try out these dishes. So yeah,
she's about to say everyone dig in, but then she realizes she's on a podcast and she can't say that. So if you are listening to this on audio, and feel free, Nick, give it a shot. Do check out our YouTube channel. We'll make sure we'll give the links in the description below, above. Sometimes it's above. Everybody always says below, though. But yeah, check out our YouTube channel, and then you can kind of see what we're actually talking about here. If you're on your drive home, you're probably starting to get hungry. As my partners in crime next to me kind of dive in. How's those first bites? They are speechless, so I will just continue rambling as they just... I guess it's good, right? Because like otherwise it wouldn't be like this. Mm-hmm. We didn't need the garbage can nearby.
It's definitely not like the last episode where we had the garbage can on standby. For those that missed that episode, we had the launch team join us to do the Bean Boozled Challenge. So we had jelly beans ranging from rotten fish to dirty socks and barf. So
yeah, this is a significant upgrade for the season.
Mm-hmm. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, how is it? Have you had this before, first of all, Nick?
I've had it before, but not from this restaurant.
Okay, I missed the name of the restaurant. Who are we pumping today?
It's called Uncle Skewers.
Uncle Skewers, are they sponsoring us?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay, no, they're not sponsoring. Forget it. Forget about Uncle Skewers. But I mean, how's the beef roll?
It's delicious. I love it.
Nice, yeah. Nice.
I was expecting this to be more like a Fear Factor challenge where I was going to get like scorpions or something. So this is fantastic.
Yeah, I think Gina and I talked about it, and like she wanted to be kind to you because it's your first time on the show, and we want you to come back. So I mean, when it was just me, she had me eating sock flavored jelly beans, but
right.
a little bit better than that. But yeah, I mean, now that we've kind of kicked off the food, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your past and how you got involved with obviously TTT Studios. We've had Chris on in the past.
Yeah, for sure. So at TTT, I'm the director of project management, and so what that means is I'm responsible for basically delivery for all of the client projects that we have. So what TTT, who we are, is we're a digital innovation studio. So we make custom applications for mobile, web, desktop, Unity. We're getting into a lot more now. Mm-hmm. And we do end-to-end development. So basically starting from working with a client when they have an initial idea, they want to figure out like what can we do with them. So we help them solve problems all the way through to actually writing the software and delivering that to them. So in my role, I'm responsible for the team that kind of manages those who actually do the work. So it's a lot of like project management kind of fundamentals. Yeah. And I've got a team of about 3 people who I manage, which is really exciting. When I first started, I was the lone PM, and that was tricky, balancing everything on my own. But now thankfully I've got this team. And Yeah, it's a ton of fun. I really enjoy working with the whole team. Chris is fantastic.
Are we
great.
paid to say that? Yeah, we do
I
like
was.
Chris. We do like Chris. One of the questions I have right off the top of my bat is because I think people use the word PM, like they kind of throw it around pretty regularly. Obviously, like you deal with different projects. There's also something called a product manager.
Yeah.
Like, can you kind of just for maybe those that are looking to dive into tech, like kind of just explain a brief difference between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. So we also do a bit of product development as well. So we have a need for experience on both sides of that. So project management really is about kind of a limited time initiative, like something that has a beginning, middle, and end that you then deliver. So there's typically a bunch of steps that you need to do in order to make that happen in terms of like on a compressed schedule, looking at like what the risks are going to be involved, figuring out your timeline, your schedule, budget, and then trying to fit the scope of work into the different constraints that you have, and then it ends. With a product, it doesn't really ever end. It's just an ongoing cycle of things that you try to keep improving over time. So it's a different set of skills that a product manager would need.
Yeah.
And they tend to also be a little bit more higher level because often there isn't a client involved. So it's a bit more strategy, looking for like what does the client really need. Sorry, not the client, but what's the customer really need?
Yep.
What features should we be folding in? What's the priority of those features? Getting more data, things like that. Whereas the project manager is much more focused on just the execution of getting done what the client's asking for.
Fair enough. Yeah, and like just talking about like skill sets, I guess the first elephant in the room question is like, how technical do you have to be? Let's focus on project management because I think that's why we're here today. Yeah, like for people outside looking in, like what are some of the skills, some of the experiences that they need to kind of get into those roles?
Yeah. So first, a lot of times people think that you need to be a developer to be a project manager, and that's absolutely not true. So I happen to know a little bit about how to develop, but I'm by no means like a professional developer. And that helped me kind of get a bit of insight into what the experience is as a developer, but I don't need to know the details and ins and outs of that to be a project manager.
Gotcha.
So the skills that I try to bring to the table are more around like the soft skills and the hard skills about just the management of the project itself. And then trust that I've got experts who know how to do like all the technical architecture and the development stuff and also on the design side as well. Sometimes people think that I need to take a bunch of coding lessons to become a project manager. Not true. It's really more about working with people and coordinating and understanding that part of it, like how to manage people.
Yeah.
So I have a question then. Did you go to like any formal schooling to learn like kind of like project manager skills, or was it just kind of like a build-up of experiences and opportunities that kind of led you to this position now?
Yeah, it was all completely by accident. There was no intent behind my career whatsoever. I started in engineering at UBC because I wanted to be an engineer. And over the course of the different experiences I had, it was only really in retrospect that I looked back and realized, oh, wait a minute, like most of this has been project management. So I didn't start in software. I was starting in manufacturing. So I was designing things and then getting them built, like physical things. And then that moved into logistics later on, and then some consulting, and then ultimately software. So, and it was really, again, only in retrospect that I look back and realized that I was doing project management that whole time. Because as I was doing those things, I thought, oh, I'm an engineer, or I'm, something else, say a designer of some sort. But I realized, oh, wait, no, I'm actually managing people and schedules and budgets and managing clients and all the rest. And then when I got into software, I realized, oh, wait, this is all actually pretty useful.
Yeah.
And now I'm a PM.
Yeah. And do you see that kind of similar career paths for like the team that you manage and the other PMs? Like they all kind of have a unique journey, or like what are they coming into?
I think like when I go to hire a project manager, what I look for is somebody who has some sort of interesting journey. If nobody is, I mean, this may not be true, but as far as I'm concerned, nobody's born growing up wanting to be a project manager. It's not like the most exciting, thing for kids. So I'm always a little bit skeptical when somebody just immediately dives into that and nothing else. Yeah. So if like a while ago I was looking for to hire a PM, and I noticed that a candidate had a background in journalism, that immediately stood out to me because that's not common for people who want to get into PM. But it showed me that they're inquisitive. They know how to put a story together, and they know how to like fact find, and probably there's some like tenacity there with like trying to chase that story down. Those are like some really cool attributes that I'd want to have in a project manager. So I think the more variety you can bring to the table, the better you're going to be as a project manager.
Yeah. And does the technical aspect matter at all then? Like if they don't know what React Native is, if they're like, we don't know iOS from Android, like is there a certain bar, I guess for you guys specifically?
It depends. So if we're looking to hire like a junior project manager, all of that stuff can be taught.
Yeah.
So if they're bringing to the table an ability to like manage people and also have sometimes like say tricky conversations with a client, because sometimes things can get a little bit dicey because in any kind of relationship, things aren't always the best. So if somebody knows how to like negotiate and stand their ground and always work towards a win-win, that to me is way more important than if they know what React Native is. Like you can learn that a lot easier. But then there is the job. Then say that's part of my job is making sure that PM gets up to speed quickly.
Yeah.
So they understand the relationship between the front end, back end, and design, and how it all fits together, and what the development pipeline is.
That's sweet.
Yeah. I just really want to say that I love that you highlight that you look more for like a unique experience rather than just like technical, because it really does. I think one of the things that a lot of like younger people or those that are looking for a career change, their hesitancy really comes from the fact that they don't think they're qualified to move industries or to apply for a position that they've always dreamt of. Like they don't realize that, hey, maybe those random assortments of experiences, projects that you've done could lead to the position that you want. Like definitely for myself too, like I came from the hospitality industry. I dabbled a bit into streaming video games, and then I've always wanted to get into tech, and then here I am. Like I would not have thought, 10 years ago, I'm like, definitely no way I would even dream of like working in a tech industry, but so, it's definitely really great that we highlight that a lot, because I think some of the listeners, there's always this kind of fear that they want to like overcome, and they just don't think that you have to be, or they think that they have to be learning code or the technical abilities when.
Yeah, not at all. To me, I've always thought it's more about following your interests, and as long as you keep doing that, and as long as you can keep paying your bills doing that, then that's the thing that matters.
Yeah.
We seem to hire a lot of gamers. Shout out to our brand new producer, Samson, who's so if the video looks nice, it's all thanks to him. If the sound looks crappy, it's all thanks to him. So definitely leave that comment whether it's good or bad.
And speaking of journeys, I just wanted to kind of touch on a little bit more about your journey to coming to TTT Studios, because from my understanding, you have quite a wide range of experiences and jobs and projects that you worked with. Like you worked with NASA, you worked with the UN Archives, Canadian Armed Forces, various startups. So out of all of these different like work experiences, like what were some of the skills that you took out of it, or like what were some of the key highlights that you've enjoyed about them?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess first, the one thing that stood out to me was that I wouldn't have worked probably with any of the more exciting clients that I've worked with if it wasn't for surrounding myself with really smart people. It's just being really lucky to find myself in different situations where those types of clients were interested to work with the people that I was working with. And I think like it's like easy to like name drop, like, oh yeah, I worked with NASA, right? I worked with, so and so. But the thing is, it all comes down to people. And some of those experiences were fantastic and some of them were not fantastic. And I think there wasn't really any one thing that I took from any one of those clients in particular. It was just like being exposed to a variety of different kinds of personalities and different kinds of projects and different kinds of challenges. And also being given the opportunity to like mess up a bunch and learn from that. That's, I think, all really what led me to getting to where I am now. If I didn't have those opportunities to make those mistakes in the past, and also like sometimes like very visible mistakes, like as you say with these types of customers, then that put a lot of pressure on me to get better fast. And it's and I'm really thankful for the kind of the luck that I've had, I guess, over the course of my career.
Yeah, I guess there's little room for mistakes. I'm just looking at your resume right now. Devon Island, none of it. I feel like there's a story or two there.
Yeah, sure. So, as I mentioned, I started out in engineering, and initially I wanted to work in the space program. Yeah. And so I grew up thinking I was going to be an engineer, working with, say, NASA, the Canadian space program. And then as I got towards the end of my undergraduate, I realized like I didn't understand how to work in the space program. Like it's easy to say that, but like how do you actually break in? Like who are your contacts? How do you do that? So I remember really vividly sitting on my bed in my dorm watching TV, and this documentary comes on, and it was this scientist who was working in the Arctic, and I thought, I want to do that. And so I figured out, like, the scientist I looked at, or was watching the documentary on, I looked into her background and realized, well, she was like a researcher. So like, okay, I got to do my master's then. So I applied to master's school and thankfully got in for engineering. And then I was able to build up contacts and go to conferences and ultimately even meet that scientist. And then later, a job opportunity came up to manage that site that was in that documentary.
Wow.
And I didn't apply at first. And so it was, again, this same scientist, Dr. Darlene Lim, who works for NASA. And she said, like, Nick, you should just apply for this. Like, don't worry if you don't think you have the right credentials or whatever, just apply and see what happens. And I did, and then I ended up getting it, which is like totally blew my mind. So what that job was managing a research station in the Arctic for about 3 years. So the station itself is on Devon Island, which is the world's largest uninhabited island. And it's right between Canada's two most northerly communities. So one being Resolute Bay, and the other being Grise Fjord, which is the most northerly. So there's an awesome opportunity to work with the Inuit in the far north as well, which I wasn't expecting at all as a part of that. But that's where, like a lot of these names that you mentioned, like it's particularly NASA, the Canadian Space Agency, and a bunch of other organizations like militaries and universities from around the world, they would come to the site to do research because it was really very similar to like Mars and the moon there. It's like very cold, very dry.
Yep.
So they do like spacesuit testing and rover testing and things. And my job was basically managing all the logistics. So like, how do you get to the island? How do you get off of the island? How is everybody kept safe? Do they have all the gear they need?
You're running real life Survivor there?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So yeah, I learned a huge amount there about, like my job was project manager, but I remember when I was hired, the first thing I did was buy a bunch of books. Like, what does it mean to be a project manager? Because I had no idea. Right?
Yeah.
And so then just very quickly understood that really what it was about was taking care of people. And I think that's something that stuck with me even to now is what clients need, or customers, or in this case in the Arctic, people needed to feel like they were going to be safe and everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And like, don't worry about it, we got this. And I think that's, as long as you can kind of exude that sort of temperament as a project manager, you're going to be good.
Yeah, that's awesome. So were you there in the Nunavut for most of it?
So we would go up, our field seasons were for about 2 months in the summer. So that's when things had kind of melted and you could get around more easily.
Yeah.
And then we'd go up in the spring just after the sun would come back, because there's periods of 24-hour darkness and then 24-hour light. So we'd go back up after the sun came back just to engage with the communities there, let them know what we wanted to do. Also get buy-in from the communities as well, like to make sure that they're okay with what we were doing there. And then also hire from the communities, because we really wanted to work with them directly on this. So I had a lot of opportunity to go up there and see it in different seasons, and it was just spectacular.
So sort of a silly question, because it sounds like, yes, there are communities there, but it sounds quite small, and 24-hour darkness sounds pretty miserable, not going to lie. Yeah. How does that kind of compare to what we've all experienced as society in the last couple of years with the pandemic, with isolation? Like, did that prepare you for it? You're like, oh, I know this game.
Kind of, yeah. Actually, that's a really interesting point. So both of those communities are tiny. Resolute at the time, I think, had 250 people.
Wow. And
Grise Fjord, I think, was 150 people. And that's the whole town. And they're all, like, you can't drive to these places. It's all serviced by planes. You have to fly in. And all of your stuff is flown in as well. So all your groceries, everything that you need. So I was never there during the 24-hour darkness period. Yeah. But yeah, I think probably that did prepare my mindset a little bit for the pandemic. And just like, it wasn't that big a deal that we were in lockdown for me, because like I was used to like not being able to like really go outside for long periods, or not have like access to stuff
due to climate.
So kind of being deprived of things that we normally take for granted here. Like I was like, well, I think this is okay. I think the hard part though was not knowing how long it was going to go on for, right? Because it is this progressive evolution of like, oh, this is going to be a few months to this is going to be now most of the year, now more than a year, and that was hard to deal with. Yeah. At least in the Arctic, like, well, this is where I live. It's going to be like this forever. Yeah.
Did you have a calendar? You were like, this date?
In the pandemic, or when I was up?
Not the pandemic, because we don't know, right?
No, I loved every minute of being up in the Arctic. It was the seasons always felt too short. I wish I could have spent more time there. And yeah, I really encourage anybody, if you ever have a chance to go up to the far north for whatever reason, like take that chance, because it's completely unlike any other part of the country.
I can imagine. So
I definitely want to put that on my bucket list. There's a lot of animals up there that I would love to see in person. Yeah.
no, we're throwing you straight to the 24-hour darkness.
Hey, I might be used to them. Yeah, I have a question for you then. Like, was there, like, it doesn't have to be when you were in the Arctic, but maybe just in general, like from your previous work experiences, like, did you ever have like an oh shit moment? Pardon my language, but...
Yeah, all the time. That's like every day. Can you be more specific?
Okay, how about, what was a moment that you had that you just like, it could be, let's say, like, what was your, what was the most challenging oh shit moment that you had to work through? Or what was the most funniest one? The resolution came out to be, hilarious after you got past that hump.
Geez, I don't know if I've had any hilarious ocean moments. They've all been kind of scarring.
Oh, no. Okay.
I think, there's lots. So I think the first biggest, like, oh shit moment, like where I really screwed up, was working on the Arctic job, where I was like maybe 3 days into the job up in the Arctic. And so again, my job was like trying to ferry people and stuff between these two islands on these charter flights that we would have. And the weather is really volatile there. So like you can be looking at the window and within seconds it'll go from like a clear sky and it's beautiful to just totally socked in with fog and rain or snow or whatever. And so when that happens, you can't fly. Yeah. And that can last for weeks and it's totally unexpected. Like it's very difficult to predict the weather there. So usually in the schedule, whenever we had the chance to get ahead a little bit, we would take that chance because that might disappear immediately and then you're screwed. So it's, like my third day there, and two researchers from the Canadian Space Program came up a little bit earlier than expected. And so normally they would have just spent the night in Resolute and I'd ferry them out the next day when they were scheduled to go to the island the next day. And but I thought, well, let's get ahead of the situation a little bit. And I figured out like to bump some cargo off and put these people on a flight and then send them in. And then as soon as they landed, I got a call from my boss on the satellite phone, and just like livid that I had done that because I hadn't given them a heads up. And he was just tearing into me, saying that I told you, to do this, and you didn't do it, and now this affects like the balance for the meal planning because they only had so much food at the time.
Gotcha. That
was part of my language. That was a bullshit complaint on his part. They had more than enough food, and I maintain to this day, if you're listening, former boss, I was right and you were wrong.
You didn't starve. No. It was fine. You were just hangry.
The problem with it, though, and why I felt so bad is because, I wanted to make a good impression, and it was a lot of people saw that there was this thing that was done that maybe should not have been done. But there was no like support. Like I was literally thousands of kilometers from anybody who knew or cared anything about me. And I couldn't just like pick up the phone and like call my mom and, cry to her or anything. So I really forced me to like have to just like suck it up and deal with it and know that the next morning I had to wake up and face the same people again and just work through that problem. And there were a number of things that I did probably in that first year that were not the best decisions. Nothing ever that was like unsafe or anything, but just like better decisions could have been made. And even now when I think about it, I kind of cringe a little bit inside and think like, man, that was either just embarrassing or, I wish it had, or something maybe cost money.
Yeah.
But it's because of that now I feel like it sort of, it sharpens you like as you go on. And so now I'm a little bit less concerned when things come up because I know I'm going to learn from it and I'm going to be better for it. So it's not as big of a deal, I guess.
Yeah. And then like tying that back to working with your team, working with project managers and things like that. Like I think being in the project manager, a lot of times you're stuck in the middle, right? Like your dev team might expect certain things. The client expects certain things. Those things are not always the same things. So you're caught in the middle a ton. Yeah. When mistakes are made, and I don't even want to say it's the PM's mistake, just mistakes are made. Yeah. I think any way you put you catch fire on both sides, right? What kind of advice do you have people for how to deal with conflict, right? And by conflict, I mean like mistakes have been made, you have to deal with it. Whether it was your fault or not, you have to deal with it, right? Like how do you kind of guide people that are going through those moments?
Sure. So often I find that when you're in the like heat of the moment and something's really going off the rails, it's almost like our field of vision tends to kind of narrow down and you're not really like you have no peripheral vision. You're just looking at what's in front of you. And for those of you who are just listening, my hands are close together indicating that my field of vision. It's not far apart. Yeah. So the first thing is really just to like take a beat and like breathe and just ground yourself in the moment and realize that like there's more going on around you than just this one problem. Just to basically settle down. Then the other thing is it's not about like who did what and when and pointing fingers and laying blame and getting upset about that. Like there's a time to figure out what the mistake was and how to resolve that maybe in the future. But in that moment, it's like thinking really critically, like how can you move this forward in a way that's going to be productive?
Yeah.
It doesn't even really matter what the problem is. Like how can we solve this? And seeing it not so much as a roadblock where that's the end of the road, but more as like what are the hows that we're going to get past this? Because if you can't do that, then you just get stuck, and then you get in that cycle of people blaming each other and getting upset and just wanting to like leave the situation. So I think as a PM, you want to reassure the team that no matter what's going on, you're not there to blame anybody or make people feel uncomfortable or anything like that. Because also you're probably going to need their help to get out of the situation, right? So you need to create some psychological safety that they know that they can throw ideas out. Maybe the first few ideas aren't going to be great, but like we'll get to something that will be good, and then we'll move forward together from that.
That's terrific.
Yeah, it's really great advice because it really does highlight, like, first off, that it's like, no, sometimes it's not okay to make mistakes, but mistakes will happen. You can't, be perfect in everything that you do or execute. So it's just a matter of like how you handle the aftermath of those mistakes. Yeah. And also you brought up another great point as well, is that, mistakes aren't something to be afraid of, but using it as kind of like this self-drive or motivation to just do better. And it's kind of like a very common theme I find with even just like entrepreneurship, which we also highlight quite a lot on the show, is that we should look at failures more so as a positive thing, because if you don't fail, then you don't know how to improve from that. So it's really great that you brought that up, and as well as, of course, creating a safer environment for your team to collaborate, work together, because you can't really focus on getting the solution if you're just tunnel visioning just on your own, right? It's nice to have a couple brains working together. So really great,
Well, and I mean, all of it's easier said than done, because you're going to be upset in the moment, like no doubt.
But
it's like trying to like rise above that in a way that like you don't necessarily show that to the team or like client or whoever the situation is, and just trying to be as unemotional, I guess, as you can, but with empathy at the same time towards the people that you're in the situation with.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think empathy is becoming such a strong skill set as well that I don't think a lot of people, like, I think maybe years ago, bosses kind of thought, oh yeah, you don't need empathy, you just need a business mindset and like very like, hard on your employees. But it's actually kind of the trend nowadays I notice is that it's a lot more focus is coming in on like emotional well-being of your employees, like making sure like their life balance is okay, stress levels. It's a lot more empathy that is required, and I think that's a really strong skill set to have.
Absolutely. And I'm finding that a lot too, like particularly with development teams where, if things start getting off track a little bit and you're behind schedule, like you can't just say work faster. Like it's like be creative faster. Like you can't do that. So then you need that empathy to take a step back and try to figure out what is it that's slowing things down. And it could be personal things. It could be something related to the pandemic still. It could be anything. Like you have no idea really. So that's a huge part of it, is like really getting to the human side of it and trying to figure out how to get around those roadblocks from that perspective.
For sure.
Yeah, I think the difficult part is like when you hire someone, like very quantitatively you look at it like, I don't know, like a Street Fighter or video game, like they have 99 in fighting or 30 in strength or 30 in power or something like that, right? With empathy, it's really kind of hard to gauge. I mean, we can use scenarios and things like that, but until crap hits the fan, that's when you know how people react in certain situations, right? And that's only happens after you've hired them and worked with them for a bit, right?
Yeah. It reminds me of something that same boss, who I admit that I'm right and he was still completely wrong. What I learned from him was he said that nobody really knows what a project manager does until something goes wrong. And that really stuck with me my whole career, because it's super true. Because when you're doing well, nobody really knows, but it's only when things go wrong, then you start seeing that empathy or those skills come into play that you can't really quantify. And like, oh, okay, that's what a project manager does.
You're like the Abbotsford Dam people. I don't know if you remember that story from somewhere during the pandemic and climate change and all that. We had a huge flood in Abbotsford, for those of you that are listening afar. That's a suburban of Greater Vancouver, and like apparently all that was keeping the city of Abbotsford from turning into a lake again was like this one dam and like a couple like bags of sand. But I'd never heard of this dam before in my life. And all of a sudden it's really important. We're not going to have produce for the next 10 years or something like that. And it was all based on like one thing.
Yeah.
So that's a project manager.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I have a question for you then. So it seems like, you kind of gone through quite a lot of unique different experiences and that's kind of molded you to who you are. If you could kind of go back in time, let's say 10 years, 20 years ago to your younger self, what would some of the things that you would want to reassure them or give them advice or just kind of, just tell them?
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a good and hard question. I think I'd probably say that it's going to be a lot harder than you think, but it's also going to end up being a lot better than you think. I couldn't have imagined 10 years ago that I'd be getting to do the things that I get to do now. Like when I mentioned managing a team, like that brings me so much satisfaction. I'm so proud of what the team has been able to do, and not any credit to myself, but just that this team has come together to manage projects the way that they have, and that I've had a hand in helping to shape that team. I never thought I'd get a chance to do something like that, and that's amazing. And I think my 10-year-ago self would have been pretty excited about that. But again, like all the mistakes and things that needed to happen over those last 10 years to get to the point where I could, do what I do now somewhat effectively, I think that stuff was harder than I was expecting it would have been. So I probably have a good conversation around that.
How would you describe your style of leadership, and is it different than what you imagined you would be as a leader?
I guess I didn't really see myself so much as a leader, growing. I guess that's kind of true and not true. I mean, I saw myself in sort of like a leader from the side, sort of, not like somebody who's like out in front, like clearly as the leader. I always knew that, like, class projects, even like in school and stuff, I would try to step up. But I guess as I've gotten older and more comfortable and at ease with myself, I've been able to be out front more and play in that sort of space as a leader.
Yep.
In terms of my style, I guess very collaborative. It's like any initiative that I ever get into, I know that I'm not there because of my ideas necessarily. Like what I bring to the table is knowing how to get people to work together in a way that'll be really collaborative and creative and fun. And I'll have ideas to pitch in here and there for a project or product or whatever, but really the other people are a part of that initiative because of the expertise that they have, whether it's development or UI design or business or whatever. So I guess it's really making sure that those people on the team have an opportunity to like really talk and collaborate. And so it's, I guess collaborative would be the word to describe that.
Cool.
Right. Yeah. And I have a question for you. So maybe, for those that are listening in and they're like, hey, like TTT Studios sounds great. Nick sounds awesome. I want to work for him. What would be some advice or tips that you have if they're looking, like, let's say an opening came up, like what would be some of the tips that you'd give them? Like, should there be like additional experience that they're looking for or any certain skill sets that they should write, like even on their resume, for example, or during the interview process? Like,
sure. Yeah. At first, if you go to our website, TTT Studio, there are a number of open job positions right now.
As of April, May 2022. If you're listening to this in 2028, we can't guarantee it.
Good point. But yeah, we're always on the hunt for good development and design talent, and we're really growing our business with Unity as well. So we're always looking for good Unity talent, in addition to the opportunities when we're looking for project managers and marketers and other people. I think one thing that I love about TTT is that we're always willing to take a chance with somebody who isn't necessarily like 100% established in that field. So even like when I review project managers, I'm not looking for somebody who has like a decade of experience and has been all the places and seen all the things. I'm totally open to taking a chance on somebody who maybe doesn't have a tremendous amount of experience. I certainly don't look too much at like the especially in the project management world, sometimes people get really distracted by like the credentials, like a PMP or certified Scrum Master, all that stuff, which is good, but not the only thing. Really, it comes back to what we were talking about before about like those soft skills that you bring to the table. But I think if people have experience working in teams, that's a big plus. If you've worked on some kind of project where you're kind of answerable to some sort of stakeholder, that's a good thing. No matter, again, if you're a developer, designer, no matter what, that's good. Having some sort of portfolio to point to is something that really helps us, because it's so much more than just the resume. It's really like what's your body of work, even if it's limited, like just show us kind of what you can do now and where you want to go. And if you look like you're a team player and you're excited about solving interesting problems, then yeah, we definitely want to talk to you.
Yeah.
I got one more question on my end. Because we've had Chris, one of the founders of TTT Studio, on the show before, and you know, he's a fun guy, and we love Chris actually. But I want the scoop. What's a story about Chris that he doesn't want told?
Oh wow!
Putting you on the hot seat here.
There is no story that Chris would not tell you himself. I think that's been one of the things that I did not expect about working at TTT is just how wild Chris and his brother David are, and just the great culture that they bring to the table there. It's so much fun. I'm like literally really hard pressed to come up with something that I think would embarrass him. The only thing I think that well, maybe here's one thing. I noticed from time to time, and maybe this is as he's getting older, I'm not sure, he tends to fall asleep in meetings. So now that we've all been on like Zoom and Google Meet and stuff over the pandemic, like we're just on camera all the time, and people will be talking or I'll be talking, and then I'll look over at like the little panel with his face, and he's just like gently nodding off. So I actually have a little folder on my desktop of screenshots that I take whenever I notice that, and I'll just snap one and put it in there for safekeeping.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I'm going to do with those, but they'll come in handy at some point, I think.
All right. So if anybody is listening to this and is not driving and safely by a computer, I want you guys to tweet Chris right now with the hashtag #AreYouAwake. All right, we're gonna see if we can get this to trend, and let's see if it becomes a thing. Tell the team at TTT Studios we wanna kind of bomb his mentions with "Are you awake?"
Great, thanks so much, Nick. So we're just gonna kind of wrap this up with our last famous question that we ask every guest, and I always find this question really interesting. Sam thinks it's kind of, you know, has his moments, but
Jean's a dork.
No, because I find that, you know, depending on who our guest selects and the reasons, like, it's very interesting, like, the reasoning behind it. Like, some people, they choose, like, people for their team just based off of, like, you know, personality, how they would get along with them, or some people actually look at, like, the credentials, skill sets that they could bring to it. So it's very fascinating to see how each of the guest minds work here. So the question is, if you were to build out a dream product, company, or just have your dream team, you can choose up to 3 people, whether they are fictional characters, whether they are historians, dead or alive, celebrities, or people that you know in real life and work with. Who would those people be?
That's an amazing question. So I guess for me, any kind of business or initiative kind of needs 3 kind of key roles. I guess maybe I'll start there, and then I'll figure out who I'd say. So I think the main roles are like a diplomat. So somebody who's kind of like your front person, who's out kind of drumming up interest, who's kind of managing, building excitement, managing stakeholders, whatever, but also somebody who's there to kind of defend the team a little bit as well. You need a PM of some sort, like some sort of coordinator. And I think you also need somebody who's like your tactician, like who's going to be like executing on this stuff. So that's kind of what I look for, like in any kind of project, like when I'm managing, like who are those roles? So maybe I'll use that as the framework. So I think for my diplomat, I think I'd pick Ryan Reynolds. And Ryan Reynolds, if you're listening, I mean, although I do love Chris Hobbs, I would drop everything and go to work for you if you're out there. I think he'd be an amazing diplomat for this business I would be launching, just because like he's like so charming.
Oh, he is. Yeah.
But also he's got like bite, right? Like you know that he can only probably be pushed so far, and he's going to be going to bat for the team. Plus, super smart business guy. Like I think that he'd be amazing. For number 2, for the coordinator PM role. To me, hands down, my all-time favorite PM is Liz Lemon from 30 Rock. She's not really like, well, I'm maybe also dating myself here as being an old man.
No, I know the reference.
So
Jean doesn't.
Liz Lemon, so it's Tina Fey, the comedian.
Tina Fey, yes.
She was sort of like the producer for this like fictional Saturday Night Live kind of show, and there was a comedy series about that. So she wasn't like technically a project manager, but like that's basically what she did. It was like this swirling storm of all these crazy things happening around her, and she's the one person in the middle trying to lock it all down and make something happen. So she'd be my coordinator. And then for the person who's like the detail-oriented tactician, and this is going to be another kind of nerdy answer, I guess, the developer who made Wordle. Because to me, that's like perfect software. It's like, it's so simple. It just does exactly what it needs to do and nothing more. There's no like engagement, like like nonsense stuff. It's just like, it's perfect. You play it once, you're done for the day. I love it. And so I'd want somebody like that to be my
Are you on your daily Wordle these days?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm on several threads also with also my mother-in-law. She's like big on the trash talking.
Really?
She's
trash talking.
I'm pretty convinced that she's cheating. She gets way too many twos, and I'm doing way
Okay, so
worse than that.
settle this debate for me, because this is something I have with my friends. This has nothing to do with anything. Doesn't matter. Wordle. If you use a pen and a paper to figure it out, is that considered cheating?
I think it's okay.
What are your thoughts, Jean?
I think it's okay as well, because it's kind of like you're not Googling it. You're kind of going off of the database you already have in your head.
Yeah.
So just to play devil's advocate a little bit on the other side, right? Like, I think part of the difficulty of Wordle is because you're given that one line, and you have to kind of type these letters in annoyingly, and they only go linearly, like first word, second word, third word. Once it's on a piece of paper, you can put words in whatever order you want, right? You can even have, I don't know, break out a Scrabble board and just keep twirling things. And I feel like that works. I'm not a psychologist, but I feel like that works different parts of your brain, making it easier. So I don't know. If you guys have passionate thoughts on this, feel free.
Well, I don't think that making something easier is necessarily equivalent to cheating.
That
Because
is fair.
you're just using your brain to find an alternative solution to the problem. I think cheating is more so like, for me at least, by definition, it's obviously like copying answers. So you're not using any of your own
Right,
knowledge
like when the
or
code got leaked and I had the answers for the next 15 things.
Exactly.
Thanks, Fred.
Yeah, so I don't know, that's my personal take on it. Like, the way I look at, like, you know, writing, for example, for Wordle, it's just kind of like, essentially you're just transcribing whatever's going on in your mind just on paper. So it's visually just easier to look at rather than trying to decipher it, just imagining it. Yeah. So kind of like, Queen's Gambit, you know, how she, like, imagined the pieces. Like, not all of us are capable of imagining that through our brain, so it's just easier to do it on paper.
So let's use software. Awesome. Are you into any derivatives? Worldo?
I played Wordle, which was like 4 at the same time, which was crazy. There's also like a movie doll or something I just saw the other day, but I haven't played that yet.
Wordle makes me want to break the computer.
Because he sounds
maddeningly frustrating.
No invested here.
That's why I have so many computers. I need a backup.
Awesome. Well, yeah, that definitely wraps up our episode for this season. All right. Sorry, not season.
We're done. Season 3. We're good.
This is the first episode. There's plenty more episodes to come, everyone.
Closing down shop.
Yeah, but yeah, thanks so much, Nick, for joining us today and kicking off season 2 for us at Bits and Bytes. Like, I think, honestly, like, your journey here was definitely incredible. Wish we could prick your brain more, because, I mean, just being in the Arctic for a few months, like, that's something that I would never even imagine to even think of, like, an experience.
Okay, we'll send you there next month.
Yes, I'm down. Just make sure I'm prepared, you know. But yeah, and we'll definitely, like, you know, reach out, have you here on the show again, because we love to do like a catch up, and then maybe in the second catch up this time we'll go in a little bit more sadistic with our challenge.
Sure. Now you know us. Now it comes. We bait you in with the beef rolls, and then,
I see.
and then next time it's raw beef. All right. If you guys are listening to this for the first time, please give us a subscribe. Really helps us out. If you like it, leave us a comment. Where do you follow us? On Twitter?
Yep,
Spotify? What are the socials? I haven't been outside in 2 years, dude.
So you follow us on Twitter, Instagram. We also do have a Facebook page. You can also find our podcast on Pinecast. It will have all of the
Spotify, iTunes, all of them are on there.
Yep.
But yeah, Launch Academy HQ for most things.
Mm-hmm. And for those that want to kind of like get in contact with you, Nick, are you open to, you know, receiving any connections?
Yeah, absolutely. You can look me up on LinkedIn, contact me there. Also, through TTT, just go to the website and you'll see me on there as well, and you can reach out. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you for sure.
Awesome. So we'll definitely make sure to include that information for Nick as well as TTT Studios inside the YouTube link as well as our podcast description. So make sure to check that out. Thanks again so much, Nick.
Awesome. Thank you for having me here. This has been great.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right.
See you guys for now.
Bye, everyone. Take care.